There are some special operators called quote operators in Perl, and again, I don't know of any other languages that have anything like this. We covered them briefly in the chapter on strings in chapter 3. We're going to cover them here again a little bit more focused-like, and we'll start by copying the operators.pl file to quoteop.pl. Open that up, and we'll take a look at this string here. We'll notice that it has these quote marks at the beginning and the end. If we wanted to, say, put this template.pl in quotes, if I were to just put in a quote mark there and a quote mark there, this is not going to work. You'll notice we'll get a syntax error. We have one right there. It says bare word found where operator expected, and that would be this bare word here, because these quote marks are actually terminating the string. One solution, and this is a solution that most languages use, is to put a backslash before each of the quote marks. This is called quoting the quote marks. And what that does is that tells the Perl interpreter to not consider that the symbolic quote mark, but simply consider it the character of a quote mark. In other words, not to interpolate it, not to interpret it, but rather just to put in the literal quote mark. And if I save that and run it, we get the quotes there. But Perl has what I consider a more elegant solution, and that would be to replace these quote marks with a quote operator. And that would be the Q followed by any symbol whatsoever. And so I'll just use a square bracket, and I'll put another square bracket over here. And what this does is this Q is the quote operator, and it's followed by a symbol. You can use a slash. A lot of people will use a slash. I'll often use curly braces. You can really use anything that you want. I'll show it to you with a slash. That's a very common one to use. And if I save that and run it, you'll notice that we get the string exactly as we expect. I often use curly braces. The idea is to use something that you're not likely to use in a string. Save that and run it. And that's how that works. Now, just like there's two different kinds of quotes, there are single quotes and double quotes, there are single quote operators and double quote operators. And the difference is exactly the same. The single quote operator with a single Q does not interpolate. So if I have a variable up here, $x equals 42, semicolon, and I go ahead and put that in here, see, I put it in parentheses, $x, like that. And I save this and run it. With the single quote, we'll actually get the letters $x. But with the double quote, and that would be having two Q's, QQ for the quote operator, save that and run it. It actually interpolates that $x and it puts in the $42. This is the same as using double quotes versus using single quote marks. So the quote operator is very useful, and you will see it used a lot in Perl. Some people will just go ahead and use them all the time for all their strings. I just use it where it seems to be necessary. A lot of times if I want to include some HTML, if I wanted to say P class equals example and put this all in a paragraph like that, then I can get that, and I get those quote marks, and I'll oftentimes use this double Q for something like that. And when I run it, you'll notice I get that full HTML, and I get the quotes just where they belong and everything, and it just works out really great. So that's the common usage of the quote operator. And you see you've got the double quote operator and the single quote operator, just like you have double quotes and single quotes in Perl.